My name is Erik Rau. I've spent more than 20 years as an emergency management and public safety practitioner in half a dozen different organizations across 3 states. As part of completing my thesis in CHDS Cohort 180506, I compiled the following research on situational awareness. I hope it might be useful to you. In public safety and emergency management, we don't want things to happen, but we have plenty of opportunities to learn from them when they do. This attitude is exemplified by Rebecca Solnit's description of disasters as one avenue through which gifts arrive in her book, A Paradise Built in Hell. Part of our obligation during response is to understand those gifts that arrive during the terrible, tragic, grievous disasters. And in doing so, we have to form a picture of what is going on around us. The term for this vital process of understanding our circumstances is situational awareness, often abbreviated SA, and it appears in nearly all doctrinal documents in emergency management, but is still not well understood. What was my research question? How can models of situational awareness be adapted to describe shared SA among distributed teams in emergency management? It took a long time to narrow it down. I knew the general area I wanted to work in, but found many different ways to approach the issues. I finally settled on a framing that, given how often we fail at SA, took the problem for granted and cut straight into what I thought was the most important part of the solution. I think about maritime navigation as an extended metaphor for situational awareness. This helped me frame my research, but also connected to questions that I'd encountered previously, including the way in which European and Polynesian navigators both developed highly precise but completely distinct methods for finding their way to their destination. The top photo is from the Coast Guard cutter Eagle, representing modern European celestial navigation. Below is a painting by Herb Kane, one of the founders of the Polynesian Voyaging Society, illustrating ancient Polynesian wayfinding. Why did I choose this question? Two of the founding thinkers of situational awareness, John Boyd and Micah Ensley, each developed a definition of situational awareness that contained some common elements. Boyd based his in practical experience, while Ensley applied academic research methods. Together, their work forms the core of our understanding of SA. But the map is not the territory, and despite both researchers providing many more details than the top-line ideas they're famous for, I hadn't seen many of those details applied in EOCs. Nor did they appear in training modules, process designs, or after-action reviews. I wanted to know why not and what we could do about it. In addition to my personal tendency towards qualitative over quantitative research, the time constraints of the CHDS program made it unlikely that I could survey emergency management practitioners about SA, as well as complete the necessary institutional review boards for those surveys. So, a question that could be answered in part by comparison and sense-making methods was both necessary and likely to succeed. While Sherlock Holmes is often represented as a caricature of a detective, there are valuable insights in many stories from the canon. The Adventure of Silver Blaze, from which this quote and illustration are taken, includes the most famous pertinent negative in detective fiction. The dog did nothing in the nighttime, which is the curious incident. In many cases of SA, we need to distinguish between an absence of evidence and evidence of absence, and pertinent negatives like this help us to do so. Absences can also be instructive on a wider scale in terms of identifying anomalies that don't fit the model. Some of these are errors, but some of them are showing us gaps in the model. What was your research design? I found so many critiques of SA from emergency management incidents that I didn't bother trying to demonstrate that it was a problem, but rather took the problem for granted and started looking for its origins. Many of these seem related to the fact that EOCs are deeply counterintuitive places to work for many of the responders who end up there. Within the aggregated disciplines of public safety and emergency management, research shows widespread repeated failures of SA during modern responses that could be addressed using existing techniques, but kept happening over and over again anyway. This embarrassment of riches meant that I could find plenty to work with by studying the problem qualitatively through thematic analysis, constant comparison, and sense-making. How do we know if we're doing it right? By definition, we won't ever have perfect situational awareness, but we can clearly do better than we have been. Like Brother William of Baskerville in the novel The Name of the Rose, in order to solve the mystery, we have to first decide what it is we're looking for. Were your findings consistent with your expectations? In a word, yes. Situational awareness is critical for emergency management, and we're mostly pretty bad at it, but we already know some things about how to get better. Analysis of SA failures during responses, 2009 California fires, the Top-Off 4 exercise, and the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, to name just 3 well-documented examples, are common. Knowledge on how to improve SA is also readily available, but rarely mentioned, much less implemented. Perhaps we haven't put these things together yet because we're busy looking at the minute differences among components rather than the whole maladapted mental model. One example of a readily available improvement I identified is that we can separate the inaccessible whole of SA into more accessible components. There are several articles by different researchers who similarly differentiate SA into 3 levels. Ensley names them what, how, and why, as shown in the diagram. Unfortunately, this concept, which is found in some of the most accessible research, remains obscure in emergency management. Our current mental model doesn't even clearly define SA, much less examine how it's constructed. This separation is one of several areas that bring immediate and specific improvements to public safety and emergency management. It's just one of many new routes that are available to us if we take the time to learn the C marks. When experts from other disciplines studied emergency management, they often produced striking insights. For example, Wendy Becker's analysis of the 2004 Great Bear Wilderness plane crash. Even if they don't use the term situational awareness, those insights revealed the problems with SA are usually less about finding information and more about sharing it. So, instead of endlessly bailing water out of your canoe, in other words, solving SA problems on an incident-by-incident basis, you need to approach the problem differently and instead decide how to fix the leak in the hull. In other words, how to improve your overall model of SA. What were your recommendations? My first recommendation is to expand the familiar model of SA beyond the current military and paramilitary scope. This will enable us to take advantage of existing insights into SA from medicine, transportation, information technology, and other disciplines. In sum, then, we need to broaden our understanding of SA, study the existing research on it, and create new mental models better suited to our activity as a foundation for other improvements. Much of the research into these areas, defining and measuring, teams as the default unit, improving training and education, designing procedures, systems, and tools, will be quantitative rather than qualitative. But before we engage in the details of finding the best answers to questions, we need to apply qualitative techniques to determine which questions we need to answer. We have to expand our imagination of situational awareness to find new models that can better match our work. Unless we admit that our current models are inadequate, we'll never move past trying to fix things over and over again each time we fail. In order to improve on an area that's vital to our endeavors and yet very often performed inadequately, we should be looking as hard as we can, and in as many places as we can, for new tools and for new ways to use the tools that we have. The two tools described here, Carl Sagan's baloney detection kit, Luft and Ingham's Johari window, come from distinct disciplines, but both prove valuable at assessing not only the situation itself, but also the system and people involved in assessing it. In another example of the failure of our mental models, this self-awareness is often lacking from public safety and emergency management situational awareness processes. Thank you for your time. I hope that you'll join me on the endless voyage to study situational awareness in public safety and emergency management, and to use it to serve our communities during their times of great need.